You should call your daughter before you finish arresting me." The words were barely louder than a whisper, but they hit Officer Ryan Mitchell harder than any shout could have. For half a second, he stopped moving. The crowded electronics store seemed to freeze around him. Then the noise rushed back all at once. Phones were raised. People stared. Someone near the checkout line muttered that justice had finally caught up with another shoplifter. A teenage employee stood beside a display of smartwatches, eyes wide with nervous excitement. The fluorescent lights overhead reflected off polished tile floors, turning the entire scene cold and sharp. Ava Brooks stood in the center of it all, her wrists secured, her shoulders straight, her expression calm in a way that made no sense. Most people in her position would have been arguing, crying, demanding explanations. Ava did none of those things. She simply looked at Ryan as if she knew something he didn't. 20 minutes earlier, the afternoon had felt completely ordinary. Customers drifted through the aisles beneath giant television screens, flashing football highlights and weekend sales promotions. Children pointed excitedly at gaming consoles. The smell of fresh popcorn from a kiosk near the entrance floated through the air. Ava had entered the store carrying a worn canvas tote bag and a notebook filled with legal case summaries. She planned to spend 10 minutes picking up a discounted phone charger before heading across town to help at the community center where she volunteered after classes. Instead, she now stood surrounded by strangers who had already decided who she was. "That's her," a woman said loudly from near the customer service desk. "I saw her standing by the display." Another voice joined in. "They found the watch in her bag, didn't they?" Ryan had heard enough accusations during his 18 years on the force to recognize certainty in people's voices. Unfortunately, certainty and truth weren't always the same thing. Earlier, store security had reported that a high-end smartwatch worth nearly $2,000 had disappeared from a locked display case. Minutes later, an employee claimed to have seen Ava near the section. Then the missing item was reportedly discovered inside her tote bag. To most people, the conclusion seemed obvious. Ryan had responded quickly. He was known for acting decisively. His supervisors praised it. His record reflected it. But now, standing under the harsh store lights, something about Ava's calm unsettled him. She didn't look angry. She didn't look afraid. She looked concerned. Not for herself. For him. Ryan tightened his jaw. He had no patience for games. His morning had already been a disaster. His 16-year-old daughter, Emily, had left home after an argument before sunrise. She hadn't answered a single text message all day. Every hour that passed tightened a knot in his chest. He told himself she was safe. He told himself teenagers needed space. Yet every time his phone vibrated, hope surged before disappointment followed. Now, with dozens of eyes watching, he focused on the situation in front of him. Procedure. Facts. Evidence. That was what mattered. "Ma'am," he said firmly, "if you have something to say, now is the time." Ava glanced briefly toward the phone sticking out of his uniform pocket. Then she looked directly into his eyes. The confidence in her gaze made the air feel heavier. Around them, conversations faded. Even the employees stopped moving. For a long moment, the store seemed to hold its breath. Then Ava leaned forward slightly and spoke so quietly only Ryan could hear. The color drained from his face. Ava's words echoed inside Ryan's head long after she had spoken them. "Your daughter is safe, but she is scared." The sentence was simple, calm, certain, yet it landed with enough force to make everything else fade into the background. The noise of the store became distant. The bright advertisements flashing across giant television screens blurred together. Ryan stared at Ava for a moment, searching her face for any sign of manipulation. He found none. Her eyes did not carry triumph. They carried concern. Genuine concern. "How do you know my daughter?" he asked quietly. Ava looked down briefly before meeting his gaze again. "Because I spent nearly 2 hours talking to her this morning." Ryan felt his chest tighten. Around them, customers continued whispering. Security employees shifted nervously beside the display cases. No one knew what had just been said. To them, it looked like an officer questioning a suspect. But Ryan suddenly felt as though the roles had become far less clear. Earlier that morning, Ava Brooks had been sitting inside the community center 3 miles away. The building was old but welcoming, with faded brick walls, colorful murals painted by local children, and the scent of fresh coffee drifting from a small kitchen near the entrance. Every Tuesday and Thursday, Ava volunteered there between law school classes. She helped teenagers fill out college applications, reviewed scholarship essays, and listened when someone needed advice. Most people saw a young woman balancing too many responsibilities. Few knew how hard she worked to keep moving forward. Law school consumed her days. Caring for her grandmother consumed her evenings. Yet she still found time to show up for people who felt invisible. That morning, shortly after 9 o'clock, a frightened teenage girl had walked through the center's front doors. She wore a gray hoodie pulled low over her face. Her eyes were red from crying. At first, she refused to speak to anyone. Then Ava offered her a bottle of water and a quiet place to sit. Nearly 20 minutes passed before the girl finally started talking. She spoke about pressure, expectations, arguments at home, feeling like nobody was listening. Ava never interrupted. She simply listened. Sometimes that was what people needed most. By the end of their conversation, the teenager seemed calmer. Not happy, not completely healed, just calmer. Before leaving, she had shown Ava a photograph on her phone. "This is my dad," she had said softly. Ava remembered the image clearly. A police officer standing beside a fishing boat, smiling with his arm around his daughter. The same officer now standing directly in front of her. The same face, the same eyes. Ryan swallowed hard. "Emily?" he asked. Ava nodded slowly. She did not want to run away forever. She just wanted someone to hear her. For the first time all day, uncertainty crept into Ryan's expression. The confidence that had guided every decision since entering the store began to crack. Then his phone vibrated sharply inside his pocket. The screen lit up with a new message. The sender's name made his heart stop. "Emily." Ryan stared at the glowing screen as if it might disappear if he blinked. The message was short, 3 sentences, yet each one carried more weight than the accusations filling the store around him. "Dad, I am safe. I need some time to think. Please stop worrying." For a moment, he forgot where he was. The fluorescent lights, the display cases, the murmuring crowd all seemed distant. His thumb hovered over the screen. He wanted to call immediately. He wanted answers. He wanted to hear his daughter's voice. But before he could move, another message appeared. "I am with the lady from the community center." She listened when nobody else did. Ryan slowly lowered the phone. The air felt different now. He looked at Ava again. She stood quietly, saying nothing, allowing him to process the truth on his own. Most people would have used the moment to prove a point. Ava did not. That bothered him almost as much as the message itself. Across the store, the security manager approached with hurried steps. Sweat glistened along his forehead despite the powerful air conditioning. "Officer, we have another issue," he said. Ryan turned toward him. "What kind of issue?" The man swallowed. "The surveillance team found something." Several employees exchanged nervous looks. A young technician carrying a tablet pushed through the crowd. His hands trembled slightly as he held up the screen. "Sir, one of the camera feeds was delayed because of a software sync problem. We finally recovered the full footage." The technician tapped the display. A video appeared. Customers leaned forward. Employees gathered around. Even the whispers faded. On the screen, the smartwatch display case came into view. Shoppers moved through the aisle. Then a woman wearing a cream-colored jacket stepped into frame. She glanced around briefly before opening her oversized purse. The next few seconds changed everything. The missing smartwatch never went near Ava. Not once. The footage clearly showed the woman handling the item before slipping it into a hidden compartment inside her bag. Several gasps rippled through the store. The security manager's face lost all color. One employee covered her mouth. Another stared at the floor. Ryan felt a knot form in his stomach. The certainty that had guided him into the store now felt painfully fragile. He replayed every step in his mind. The report, the accusation, the discovery of the watch inside Ava's tote bag. Suddenly, a new question emerged. If Ava never took the watch, how did it end up in her bag? The technician tapped the screen again. Another angle appeared. This time the footage showed a crowded aisle near the phone accessories section. The same woman in the cream-colored jacket brushed past Ava for less than 2 seconds. The contact seemed harmless at first glance. Then the footage zoomed in. The woman slipped something into Ava's open tote before continuing toward the exit. Silence spread across the store. Heavy, uncomfortable, inescapable. Ryan slowly looked at Ava. For the first time since entering the building, he saw not a suspect, but a young woman who had been judged before anyone knew the truth. Yet Ava's expression remained calm. almost impossibly calm. Then the technician frowned at his tablet. "Sir," he said quietly, "there is something else you need to see." Ryan turned toward the screen again. Whatever appeared next caused the technician's hands to shake even more. Ryan stepped closer to the tablet. The technician swallowed hard and enlarged a section of the footage. The image was grainy at first, but as the software sharpened the frame, a clear detail emerged. The woman in the cream-colored jacket was not acting alone. Another person stood near the end of the aisle, partially hidden behind a promotional display stacked with wireless speakers. Every few seconds, the two exchanged subtle glances. Then the second person lifted a phone and appeared to send a message. Moments later, the woman moved toward Ava. The timing was too precise to be coincidence. The security manager rubbed a hand across his face. "We have been dealing with inventory losses for months," he admitted quietly. "Small items. Expensive items. We never caught anyone." The technician nodded. The pattern matches several previous incidents. Around them, employees exchanged stunned looks. A cashier who had earlier pointed toward Ava now stared at the floor. Another employee folded her arms tightly across her chest, avoiding eye contact entirely. Ryan felt a growing sense of unease. What had begun as a routine response was becoming something much larger. He looked toward Ava again. She remained standing beneath the bright store lights, her posture composed despite everything that had happened. Most people would have demanded apologies by now. Most people would have been furious. Yet Ava seemed focused on something else entirely. "You knew," Ryan said quietly. Ava tilted her head slightly. "I suspected. Why did you not say anything sooner?" She glanced toward the tablet screen. "Because nobody was ready to listen sooner." The answer landed harder than Ryan expected. He could not argue with it. Earlier, every piece of attention in the room had pointed in one direction. Every assumption had formed before the evidence was complete. The realization sat heavily in his chest. Nearby, the technician tapped another icon. Additional footage appeared. This time the camera angle showed the store entrance from nearly an hour earlier. The same cream-colored jacket entered the building. The same hidden companion followed 30 seconds later. Then another detail emerged. A third person walked in behind them carrying an oversized shopping bag. The security manager leaned forward. "Freeze it." The image stopped. Silence filled the space. The face on the screen was familiar. One employee immediately recognized her. "She was here last month," the woman whispered. "And the month before that." Ryan narrowed his eyes. The pattern was becoming impossible to ignore. What they were seeing was not a misunderstanding. It was an organized scheme. The group appeared to move through stores, create distractions, and leave innocent people carrying the blame. Suddenly, the security manager's radio crackled. A voice spoke urgently from the surveillance office upstairs. "We found the vehicle. The license plate matches reports from 2 neighboring counties." Several employees gasped. Ryan exhaled slowly. The investigation had just shifted in an entirely different direction. Then his phone vibrated again. Another message from Emily appeared on the screen. This one was longer. Ryan read the first sentence and felt his heart tighten. He looked up at Ava. She was already watching him, as if she somehow knew exactly what the message said before he spoke a single word. Ryan read the message twice before lowering the phone. His daughter's words were careful, almost hesitant. "I am sorry for leaving. I just needed someone to listen. Ava helped me when I felt alone. Please do not be angry with her." The last sentence lingered in his mind. Please do not be angry with her. Around him, the store remained frozen in a strange silence. A few minutes earlier, people had been eager to judge. Now many of them looked uncomfortable. The evidence playing across the surveillance screens had changed everything. Ryan slowly slipped the phone back into his pocket and looked at Ava. She stood beneath the bright ceiling lights, surrounded by strangers who had questioned her character without knowing her story. Yet she showed no bitterness, no satisfaction, only patience. The security manager cleared his throat. "Officer, we have already contacted neighboring departments. The vehicle connected to the group was spotted less than 30 miles away this morning." Ryan nodded absent-mindedly. His attention remained fixed on Ava. "You helped my daughter," he said quietly. Ava offered a small smile. "She helped herself. I just listened." The answer reminded him of something Emily's mother used to say years ago. Sometimes people do not need solutions. They need to know somebody cares. The memory arrived unexpectedly and settled heavily in his chest. Nearby, Several employees began whispering among themselves. A young cashier stepped forward nervously. "Miss Brooks," she said, her voice trembling. "I am sorry for assuming the worst." Ava turned toward her. The young woman looked no older than 19. Her eyes were filled with embarrassment. Ava simply nodded. "Thank you." No lecture. No accusation. No attempt to make anyone feel smaller. The simplicity of her response seemed to affect the cashier even more. One by one, other employees lowered their eyes. The store manager, a man who had remained silent through most of the incident, finally stepped forward. His expensive suit suddenly looked less impressive than it had earlier. "Miss Brooks," he said carefully, "on behalf of our store, I owe you an apology." Ava remained quiet. The manager continued. "What happened today should not have happened." The words hung in the air. Honest, uncomfortable, necessary. Ryan knew the apology was deserved, but he also knew it was not enough. An apology could not erase the experience. It could not erase the stares, the whispers, or the assumptions that had formed before the facts were known. Then the technician's tablet chimed again. Another update appeared from the surveillance team. The cream-jacketed suspect had just been identified through records connected to similar incidents across 3 states. The room filled with surprised murmurs. The case was growing larger with every minute. Yet Ava seemed strangely uninterested in the discovery. Her attention shifted toward the front windows where sunlight spilled across the parking lot. Ryan noticed the change immediately. "What is it?" he asked. Ava hesitated. For the first time since the ordeal began, genuine concern appeared in her eyes. She looked back at him and spoke softly. "Officer Mitchell, there is something else about Emily that you need to know." The calm certainty in her voice returned. And somehow, that frightened Ryan more than anything he had heard all day. A faint hum from the overhead lights filled the silence between them. Outside the store's glass entrance, late afternoon sunlight stretched across the parking lot in long golden bands. Customers continued moving in and out of neighboring stores, completely unaware that inside, an ordinary day had turned into something none of the people present would soon forget. Ryan studied Ava carefully. The concern in her eyes was real. That alone made his stomach tighten. "What do I need to know?" he asked. Ava glanced briefly toward the floor before answering. Emily was not only upset when she came to the community center. Ryan felt his pulse quicken. Was she in danger? "No," Ava replied immediately. "Nothing like that." The tension in his shoulders eased slightly. Ava continued. "She was carrying something much heavier than anger." Ryan waited. Around them, even the employees seemed to sense the importance of the conversation. Nobody interrupted. Nobody moved. Ava folded her hands together. "She believes she has been disappointing you for a long time." The words landed softly, yet they struck with surprising force. Ryan looked away for a moment. Across the store, a giant television displayed highlights from a baseball game. The crowd on the screen cheered. The sound felt strangely distant. "She told you that?" he asked quietly. Ava nodded. "More than once." Ryan exhaled slowly. Emily had always been bright, responsible, kind. Yet over the past year, something had changed. Their conversations had become shorter. Arguments had become easier. Silence had become normal. He had blamed school stress, social media, teenagers being teenagers. Now he wondered if he had simply stopped listening. "This morning," Ava said gently, "she showed me every text message she started writing to you, but never sent." Ryan swallowed hard. "Why?" Ava offered a sad smile. "Because she was afraid you would only hear the problem and not hear her." The answer lingered in the air. For the first time all day, Ryan had no response. No procedure. No report. No solution. Just reflection. The security manager quietly stepped away, signaling for employees to give them space. Even the surveillance technician lowered his tablet. The atmosphere inside the store shifted. The urgency of the investigation remained, but something deeper had taken center stage. Ava looked toward the front windows again. "Your daughter loves you very much." Ryan closed his eyes briefly. Hearing those words should have brought relief. Instead, they brought regret. He thought about the missed conversations, the rushed dinners, the constant phone calls from work, the times Emily had tried to tell him something while he was distracted by everything else. She said one thing. Before she left the center, Ava continued. "What was it?" Ryan asked. Ava's expression softened. She said she missed her dad. The words hit harder than any accusation could have. Ryan stared at the floor. For several seconds, he could not speak. Then his phone vibrated again. Another message from Emily appeared on the screen. This time it included a location. A small lakeside park on the edge of town. Ryan's heart leaped. Finally, he knew where she was. But before he could move, a new voice called from near the entrance. "Officer Mitchell." Everyone turned. A patrol officer had just entered the store carrying a folder. The expression on his face suggested he was bringing news that would change everything once again. The patrol officer crossed the store quickly, the folder tucked beneath his arm. His expression carried the urgency of someone who had been piecing together a puzzle and had finally found the missing piece. Ryan stepped forward immediately. "What is it?" The officer opened the folder and handed over several printed photographs. "The neighboring departments sent these 10 minutes ago." Ryan scanned the pages. His eyes widened. The faces staring back at him matched the individuals captured in the surveillance footage. But there was something else. The reports showed a pattern stretching across multiple cities and several states. Electronics stores, jewelry counters, department stores. Each case followed nearly the same formula. A valuable item disappeared. A distraction occurred. An innocent shopper became the focus of suspicion, while the real suspects slipped away unnoticed. The security manager looked over Ryan's shoulder and nearly stumbled backward. "That is them," he whispered. "That is exactly them." The patrol officer nodded. Investigators believe they have been operating together for over a year. A low murmur spread through the crowd. Customers who had remained to watch now exchanged shocked glances. Employees who had once been certain of Ava's guilt stood frozen. The truth was no longer a possibility. It was undeniable. Ryan lowered the folder slowly. Then he looked toward Ava. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. The fluorescent lights reflected softly across the polished floor between them. Finally, Ryan understood why she had remained calm from the beginning. She had trusted the truth to arrive eventually, even when nobody else had. The realization settled heavily on him. Earlier that day, he had walked into the store believing experience was enough, believing quick conclusions would lead to quick answers. Instead, the person who had seen the situation most clearly was the one nobody had listened to. Ava noticed the change in his expression. "You see it now," she said quietly. Ryan nodded once. "Yes." The single word carried more weight than a lengthy explanation ever could. Nearby, the store manager approached holding a small envelope. His hand shook slightly. "Miss Brooks," he said, "the company would like to offer compensation for what happened today." Ava glanced at the envelope but did not reach for it. "That is not necessary." The manager blinked. "Are you sure?" Ava nodded. "What is necessary is making sure it does not happen again." Several employees lowered their heads. Her answer spread through the room more powerfully than any speech. No anger, no revenge, no demand for recognition, just a simple request for fairness. Ryan looked down at the message from Emily still glowing on his phone. The location remained on the screen. The lakeside park was less than 15 minutes away. For the first time all day, hope felt stronger than fear. Then the patrol officer cleared his throat. "There is one more thing." Ryan turned. "What now?" The officer pointed toward Ava. "According to the community center director, she has spent the last 3 years mentoring teenagers across the city, including several children of officers from our department." Ryan stared at her. Ava seemed almost embarrassed by the attention. The officer continued. "One parent said she helped save their son's future after everyone else gave up on him." Silence filled the store once more. Ryan looked at Ava differently now. Not as a suspect, not even as a witness, but as someone who had quietly changed lives while asking for nothing in return. And in that moment, standing beneath the bright store lights, he realized the most important person in the room had never been the officer, the manager, or the investigators. It had been the young woman everyone had underestimated from the very beginning. For a moment, nobody spoke. The noise of the store seemed to fade into the background, replaced by something quieter and far more powerful. Understanding. Ryan looked at the young woman standing before him and felt the full weight of the day settle across his shoulders. The assumptions, the rushed conclusions, the certainty that had turned out to be wrong. Slowly, he stepped forward. Every eye in the building followed him. Customers paused beside shopping carts. Employees stood motionless near registers. Even the technicians upstairs appeared on nearby monitors, watching the scene unfold through security feeds. Ryan stopped a few feet from Ava. The polished floor reflected the bright lights above them, creating a soft glow around the crowded aisle. For several seconds, He searched for the right words. They did not come easily. Some truths never did. Finally, he spoke. Miss Brooks, I owe you more than an apology. The store remained silent. Ava looked at him calmly. Ryan continued. I walked in believing I already knew what happened. I trusted assumptions before I trusted facts. And despite everything that happened today, you still helped my daughter. His voice grew quieter, more personal. You showed her kindness when I was too distracted to see what she needed. Ava lowered her eyes briefly. The sincerity in his words filled the space between them. Nearby, the store manager nodded slowly. Several employees wiped away tears they had not expected. One customer quietly set down her phone and stopped recording. Ryan reached into his pocket and removed the key used to release the restraints. A few soft clicks echoed through the aisle. The final reminder of the misunderstanding disappeared. No applause followed. No celebration. Just a deep stillness. Ava gently rubbed her wrists before looking back up. Officer Mitchell, she said softly. Every person makes mistakes. Ryan nodded. That does not make them easier to live with. A faint smile touched Ava's face. No, but what matters is, what happens next? The words settled over the crowd. The manager stepped forward once more, still holding the envelope. Miss Brooks, please. At least let us do something. Ava glanced at the envelope again before shaking her head. There is something you can do. The manager waited. Train people to slow down before judging someone. Teach them to ask questions before deciding who a person is. The manager swallowed hard and nodded. We will. Across the store, several employees exchanged thoughtful looks. The lesson had landed. Not through anger. Not through punishment. Through grace. Ryan's phone vibrated again. This time he did not hesitate. He opened the message immediately. A new photograph appeared. Emily stood beside a small lake beneath a row of oak trees. Her expression looked calmer than it had all day. Attached to the image was a short message. I am ready to come home. Relief washed through him so suddenly that he had to look away for a moment. When he raised his eyes again, Ava was already reaching for her tote bag. The afternoon sunlight pouring through the front windows painted warm golden patterns across the floor. It looked less like the scene of a misunderstanding now and more like the beginning of something being repaired. Then Ryan took a breath and made a decision that surprised even himself. Miss Brooks, he said, would you come with me to the park? I think there is someone who would like to thank you in person. Ava paused. The store grew quiet once more as everyone waited for her answer. The drive to the lakeside park took less than 15 minutes, but for Ryan it felt much longer. The late afternoon sun hung low above the horizon, painting the sky with shades of gold and amber. Trees lined the narrow road leading to the water, their leaves moving gently in the warm breeze. Ava sat quietly in the passenger seat, looking out the window. Neither of them felt the need to fill the silence. Some moments carried enough meaning on their own. When they arrived, Ryan spotted Emily immediately. She sat on a weathered wooden bench near the edge of the lake, her knees pulled close to her chest. Ducks drifted across the water. Small ripples reflected the fading sunlight like scattered pieces of glass. The moment Emily saw the police cruiser, she stood. For an instant, uncertainty crossed her face. Then she noticed Ava stepping out beside her father. Relief replaced the worry almost immediately. Ryan walked forward slowly. No speeches, no lectures, no questions. Just a father crossing the distance that had grown between him and his daughter. Emily met him halfway. The silence between them lasted only a second before she wrapped her arms around him. Ryan closed his eyes. The knot that had lived in his chest all day finally loosened. I am sorry, Emily whispered. Ryan shook his head. No, I am sorry. The words came easier than he expected. Honest. Simple. Necessary. Emily smiled through tears and leaned against him. Nearby, Ava remained respectfully distant, giving them space. The lake breeze moved gently through her hair as she watched the reunion she had quietly helped make possible. After a few minutes, Emily turned toward her. Thank you, she said softly. Ava smiled. You did the hard part. Emily shook her head. You listened. For a moment, none of them spoke. The evening light softened everything around them. The water, the trees, the old wooden docks stretching into the lake. Ryan looked at Ava. You helped my daughter when she needed someone. Then you helped me see what I was missing. Ava lowered her eyes modestly. Sometimes people just need to feel heard. Ryan nodded. He would remember that sentence for the rest of his life. Weeks later, The electronics store introduced new training procedures focused on fairness, patience, and complete review of evidence before accusations were made. The organized theft group was eventually identified through the surveillance investigation. But that story faded from headlines much faster than another one. Employees continued talking about the young woman who chose grace when she had every reason to be angry. One crisp Saturday morning, nearly 2 months later, Ava stood outside the law school auditorium preparing for an awards ceremony recognizing community leadership. Families filled the building. Students adjusted graduation robes. Cameras flashed. As Ava entered the auditorium, she noticed familiar faces seated near the front. Emily smiled and waved. Beside her sat Ryan. He stood the moment Ava walked into the room. Not because anyone asked him to. Not because anyone was watching. Simply because respect had replaced every assumption he once carried. Ava smiled back. Warm sunlight streamed through the high windows, illuminating rows of seats and casting long beams across the polished floor. The applause began moments later. Yet the most meaningful sound came before any of it. It was the quiet certainty that understanding had finally replaced judgment. And as the light settled across the room, nobody said another word. None were needed.